But everything that's made on this planet is temporary. It's going away. Our bodies, everything you see around you is going to go away. However, God put these physical things in front of us, not for us to focus on the physical so much, but us to see through it and see the eternal. How do I know this? In the book of Exodus, God talks to Moshe, and he says, "And you shall set the showbread on the table before me always." That's Exodus 25, verse 50, by the way, in case you're looking. What did he call it? The showbread. The bread that was for show. So it gives you an idea, if you're thinking about it, that there's something behind what's for show that's a little more permanent. That's a little more substantive. In 1 Chronicles, the task of making the showbread was given to the Kohathites. And they would prepare this showbread every Shabbat. Imagine that. In Samuel, the book of Samuel, we see an incident that happened where David was being chased by Saul and a guy that Saul sent to go kill him. And he had run out of juice. And he went to the temple and he said, "Hey, I'm dying here, really. I need something to eat." I know sometimes we think we're hungry. Well, he was really hungry. And the priest said, "There's the showbread." And he wasn't worried about what nutritional factor was in it. He just knew if he ate it, he was going to live. Some unfortunate incidents happened after that. They murdered the priest who gave him the showbread. Nehemiah says this. He says, "We made ordinances for ourselves to exact for ourselves yearly 1/3 of a shekel for the service of the house of God, and the showbread for the regular grain offering, for the holy things, for the sin offerings, to make atonement for Israel and all the work of the house of God." We see that this was an important symbol in their national economy and their relationship to the Lord. The showbread. Nehemiah in chapter 10 says this: "For the showbread and for the continual meat offering and for the continual burnt offering of Sabbaths, of the new moons, for the set feasts, for the holy things, and for all sin offerings, to be made an atonement for Israel and for all the work of the house of our God. Upon the table of the showbread they shall spread a cloth of blue and put thereon the dishes and the spoons and the bowls and covers to cover withal, and the continual bread shall be thereon." Yeah, it was permanent. They didn't just leave the old stale bread sitting there. They chucked it whenever it got stale, and they put new bread on there. There was an expense to it. There was work involved in it, as was previously mentioned. Thank you, Stan. So in Exodus 25, when God says, "Thou shalt set the table showbread before me always," he was pointing at something that was emulating an eternal truth. Always. Always. So here comes Jesus. What did he say? He stood up in front of a bunch of Pharisees in the temple and said, I am the bread of life. And they were like, dude, what are you saying? Are you crazy? It says, and they began to grumble. I can just hear what they were saying in the background. Heresy. Who's this guy think he is? Because they understood what that meant. That pointed to God, Elohim, Yahweh, Adonai. It was serious what he had to say to them. I bet you they were thinking, I think we ought to stone this guy. And they tried on other occasions to do that, but his hour was not come. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not hunger. He who believes in me shall not thirst. No man can come to me unless the Father draw him, and I'll raise him up on the last day. I like what Stan said about the smell drew me to it. I wanted to eat it. Oh, that was so lovely. I know what he's talking about. You get that bread and cut it and put a little butter on it. Get a little jam or jelly and smooth that over it. And my mouth is already watering. My mom couldn't keep bread in the house. We would inhale it by the loaf, you know. Jesus was saying the same thing to us, to mankind. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not hunger. He who believes in me shall not thirst. On that day when he stood on the mountain for the second time, 4,000 people were there. And they were like, well, are you going to do the same trick again? Multiply the fish and the bread when you break? We're waiting. And Jesus had to turn to them and say, I know why you came. You came for the bread. Not the spiritual bread, the bread. So they had to say, well, what explain to us, what is it, what work is it you want us to do? And he said, believe on him whom God has sent. That's the work that God wants you to do. That's how you partake of the bread of life. That's how you have bread that will cause you to live forever. It's still the same truth, folks. Believe on him whom God has sent. That's what motivates us to be here today. Because that bread spoke of the bread of life who was coming down from heaven and who would give to us a life that goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. Lord bless you.